3.5, we are learning how to find the derivative of trig functions. So these are the 6 formulas, and yes, you need to have them memorized for the test that's coming up. So the sine of x, the derivative of the sine of x is cosine of x. The derivative of cosine of x is a negative sine of x. Tangent of x, secant squared x. Cosecant of x has that in it, negative cosecant of x, cotangent of x. And then secant of x also has secant of x, tangent of x. And then cotangent of x is a negative cosecant squared. If you look at the c's, the cosine, the cosecant, and the cotangent, they all have a negative sign for its answer. That kind of helps. These two are pretty much almost opposites other than the negative sign. The tangent and the cotangents are reciprocals and they have similar formulas, and same thing with these two. So try to just memorize those. Okay, the next page. We're just gonna find the 50th derivative if s equals 5 cosine of t. Again, let's go through this. This was in other notes. The position, f of x, you label it in meters. Velocity is derivative, meters per second. Acceleration is double derivative, meters per second squared. And jerk, is the third derivative, and it's meters per second cubed. So in this problem, they want us to find the 50th derivative, and this is the function. So we're going to find the first derivative. Whenever you have a number out in front, you can just drag it down. It's called a constant. You can always drag down the constant. The derivative of cosine on the other page, the derivative of cosine is a negative sign. So I'm going to put a negative 5 sine of t. And then I'm going to keep going. They want you to find the double derivative. I'm going to drag the negative 5 down. The derivative of sine is cosine. And then we drag it down again, negative 5. And the derivative of cosine is a negative sign, so that's why I change this back to positive. And then the fourth derivative, which we've never done the fourth derivative, we just keep going. It's going to be 5 cosine of t. And as you see, it's going to repeat. So the first one, the second one, the third one, and the fourth one, and then it starts repeating. It's kind of like I1 with the negatives in the middle. It repeats after the fourth one. So just like you did over on the other problem, you divide both sides by 50. And you're going to get 12.5, so you're going to go halfway down and halfway down. This is the second one, so that's the answer also for the 50th derivative. Okay, now we're going to find some derivatives. So dy dx equals, using trig, we're going to find the derivative. And the derivative of 4 is 0. The derivative of 3x squared is 6x. The derivative of a negative cosine is a positive sine of x. Okay, the next one, we're going to use the quotient rule. I'm going to use a different sign for derivative, y prime. Low times the derivative of the high minus high times the derivative of the low, all over low squared, which simplifies to a negative 5 cosine of x all over the sine of x and the sine of x, or the sine squared x. I'll give you credit if you can get to this spot on the test. I might give you extra credit if you know your trig formulas. Cosine over sine is a negative 5 cotangent of x, and 1 over sine is cosecant of x. So I might give you extra credit if you can go a little bit farther on the test, because on the AP test, this is a multiple choice question, and this one will not be one of the choices for the multiple choice. You have to know how to put it into this form, and that's why that's important. Okay, the next one, I'm going to use the product rule. This is the u and this is the v. Y prime equals a negative 4x squared times the derivative of tangent, which is secant squared x, plus tangent of x times the derivative of that, which is a negative 8x. Which makes, you can just leave it like that. Next problem, find the equation for the tangent line. So we're going to do y minus y equals mx minus x. I'm going to put 2 here and 2 here and use my calculator to find my y value. So you would just plug the tangent of 2 in, divide it by 2, and make sure your calculator's in radians. And you're going to get a negative 1.093 for your y value. So you're going to go y plus 1.093 equals x minus 2. You need to find the m, or the slope. So I need to come over here and do f prime of x, and I need to use the quotient rule. X secant squared x minus low times the derivative of the high minus high times the derivative of the low all over low squared. So that's the formula to find the derivative of that. And then you have to plug 2 in here, 2 in here, 2 in here, and 2 in here. Remember, you don't have secant, so you would have to use 1 over cosine of 2, and then you would have to square that because you don't have secant. So when you plug that into your calculator, you should get 3.433 for your slope. As you can see, I'm having problems connecting today, so just keep going with the notes. I'll be there in a second. Okay, next page. We're doing pretty much, it's exactly the same directions as the last one. So we're going to do y minus y equals mx minus x. And in place of x, you're going to put pi over 4. And in place of y, you're going to put 4. We need to find the m. This is a non-calculator problem on the test. So the derivative, which is the slope, the derivative of 1 is gone. I drag the square root of 2 down. And there's, remember, if it's a c, it's a negative, so it's a negative 2 cosecant of x, cotangent of x. And then again the c, so it's a negative cosecant squared x. And what you have to do is put pi over 4 in for all the x's, so this is a non-calculator. 1 root 2, because pi over 4 is 45 degrees. So it's a negative root 2. The cosecant of that picture is the square root of 2. The cotangent of that picture is 1. Minus, well, you already did the cosecant, but you have to square it, so that makes 2. So you're going to get a negative 2 minus 2 equals a negative 4 for your slope. Okay, the next problem. We have 2 more problems to do. You have to find the double derivative for this one. So the first derivative of secant of x is secant of x tangent of x. But now we have to find the double derivative. You have to use the product rule. This is u and this is v. So it's the secant of x times the secant squared x, because that's what's the derivative of tangent, plus the tangent of x times the derivative of secant of x, which is secant of x tangent of x, which gives you secant cubed x plus secant of x tangent squared x. And I'll accept that, but let's say we take out the secant of x, because they both have one. You're going to have the secant squared x plus the tangent squared x. And from trigonometry, that is very close to the formula, but it isn't. This almost equals 1. This would have to be a minus sign in between to change that into a 1. So, and in this case, this is the answer, and there is really no simplifying it using a trig identity. So, and the last problem, they want you to find the velocity, the speed, the acceleration, and the jerk. So the velocity is the first derivative. The 2 cancels out. The derivative of sine is cosine. So you're going to have a negative 2 cosine of t for the first derivative. For the second derivative, you're going to have a positive two cosine of t. Speed is the absolute value of the velocity. So the speed, this is, okay, let's start again. This is the speed. The speed is taking the absolute value of the velocity, which is positive. Now the double derivative. The double derivative, you have to go from here, which is a positive 2 cosine of t. So it just ends up that the speed and the acceleration are the same. And then jerk, which is the third derivative, is a negative 2 sine of t. And you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do this at t equals pi over 4 again. So make yourself a 45-degree triangle. And in place of all the t's, put pi over 4. And the cosine of pi over 4 is the square root of 2 over 2 times a negative 2, which ends up being a negative root 2. This one's going to be the cosine, which is square root of 2 over 2 times 2, which is root 2. This one is the same one as the speed. And the last one, the sine of that picture is also the square root of 2 over 2 times a negative 2, which is a negative root 2. So there's the notes. And like I said, you can see how I'm having problems with my recorder, but we got through it, so.